Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about applying dates to things in your content, hiding pieces of content, and also the description feature in here. So I'll start off with that. A really good feature in here that tends to get overlooked sometimes is at the top of each module here, you have this box that says add a description. And if you click that, it gives you a text box here with all kinds of controls at the top for fonts and colors and attaching media. So what I recommend doing with this is putting the instructions for the week. If you're teaching online or hybrid, having clear instructions that are easy to find are critical. And this spot here is a great place to put it. So rather than making you watch me type, I already typed up some fake example instructions, so I'll just paste these into here. So what you might want to put in here is, the learning objectives, a little introduction to what's going to be covered and why it's important. And you could also, in this spot, it's a great place to give them a little checklist for what they need to do to be done. So I tell them watch the lecture video, read this stuff in the text, take this reading quiz, and then post a discussion board and when to respond to people. And I always give them, the due date. When does it all have to be done by? So, and again, you have the text controls up here. So give them the learning objectives, give them the instructions, give them what they need to do to be done that week. And you could do an introductory thing. Here's what we're studying, and here's why it's important. Things like that. So make use of those description boxes. Sometimes people forget that this is up here. It's a good place to put your instructions. So the next thing I'll mention about descriptions is you can also add descriptive notes to individual content items. So what you could do is, if you, next to each item here, if you open this up and go edit properties in place, you can also do add a description here. So in this instance, I could write a note about this Word document, say, don't read this until you completed chapters, 12 to 15 in the book, and then update. So oftentimes people add, I put this Word document up there, I want to add a little note about it. That's where you would do that. A lot of these features are hiding. If you open these little menus, you can delete in here, but also you have that edit properties, and that's when you can add a description about an item. So that's the description boxes. So the next thing I'll show you is hiding things and putting dates on stuff. So if I've built out most of my course, and in a real example, we have modules going pretty far down here for 13, 14, 15 weeks. You probably don't want it all to be open to the students from the get-go, because you might have students who try to zoom ahead and do everything early, or ask you questions about stuff that you're not covering for weeks, and you want to keep everybody focused on the same page and have an easier time managing that stuff. So what you can do with these is you can apply dates to these modules, and you can also hide them. So the first thing I'll do is I'll show you how to apply a date. So let's pretend that the class hasn't started yet, and I'm okay with them looking at the course information, but I don't want them diving into week 1 just yet. So the semester hasn't started, I want to hide week 1. So what I would do is I queue up week 1 here, click add dates and restrictions, and then click add a start date. And then you get this little calendar box that comes open, and you can say, let's pretend this term starts on Monday. I can click, it starts on 6/8 at 3 p.m. We'll leave that alone. And if I hit update, it applies that note there. It starts on June 8th, 2020. And it also shows it on the left here, begins June 8th. And that gets displayed to the students too. I'll show you that in just a few moments. So then I can go week 2, add dates and restrictions, add a start date, and we'll pretend this starts on the 15th, staggering these by a week, and then maybe this starts on the 22nd, update. So I have these dates applied, and it shows it on the side here. So what does that mean? It starts. So This is an important caveat that I like to point out that not a lot of people catch. So to show you what this would look like to a student, I'll show you a trick here. If you click on your name in the upper right, a menu comes down, you can click View as Student. If you do that, it reloads your D2L course. If you go into the content, it shows you the content as your students would see it, including dates and restrictions. So as I mentioned, start here, course info, this stuff, I can confirm that yes, it will open for the students and they can view this stuff. But you'll notice week 1, if I queue up week 1, it's not hidden. They can view the description that I wrote. And if they scroll down, they can see the items that are in here, but they can't open any of them. So that's an important thing to remember, to be aware of, if you put these start dates in here. It shows them the stuff, but they can't open it. And it shows them the module description. So if you're not in, of course, it shows them the dates of when it opens, so this stuff isn't secret. They can see, okay, and most of them understand, okay, you can't open any of this stuff until June 8th, 2020. But you might not be comfortable with them seeing what the items are going to be and what your introduction is going to be either. So if you don't like that, let me show you some options. And then to do that, I got to get out. If I want to undo that student view, if I click up here, X out of this, makes me faculty again. So if you don't like that, what you can do is in the upper right of a module, there is this little eyeball here that says visible. So let me go week 3. I'm gonna hide week 3. So maybe week 3 is totally in draft. Week 2 is very much up in the air. It's draft. I don't want them seeing this stuff yet. I'm still working on this. Click the eyeball, flip it. Now it's hidden. And then if we reload this, some people have had trouble finding this because it's such a subtle icon up here, but that's what you do. You just toggle this. And it hides it and unhides it. And then now if I go be a student again, I can go to the content. And week 2 and 3 are invisible now. And like I said, week 1, they can see the stuff, but they can't open anything. So those are some options for you. You can hide stuff outright. One strategy I've seen, you could consider making this its own document that they can't open yet. I don't like that as much. But you could do it, pull this stuff out, make the weekly instructions a document that would be actually unclickable, they can't open. So those are things to be aware of about hiding stuff. It's not, if you put a start date, it's not as hidden as you might think. A couple other pointers people sometimes run into. If you apply a start date on a module here at the top, it applies to everything inside of it. If you hide it, it applies to everything inside of it. Occasionally, I'll see people put a start date up here, or not put a start date up here, but rather open every one of these. Go open the reading notes, edit the reading note properties, and then add dates and restrictions, or hide it, or add a start date, and then repeat for the next one and the next one, not realizing that if you put it here at the top, it applies to everything all in one click. So don't duplicate your efforts unnecessarily. You can apply start dates and hide things on the individual item level. So like maybe I didn't want them to see this until Wednesday of that week. I could open this up, edit properties, and add a start date here. Let's, June 15th. They can't. Module opens the 15th, but I don't want them seeing this until the 17th. That's a potential use for that. What I'll tell you is that this up here, if you put a start date on a module, this takes precedence. So until this, if you have conflicting dates here, this one takes precedence. So if week 2 isn't open, then this doesn't matter. So this always takes precedent. Same thing with hidden. If you hide this outright, anything in here is moot. So those are some things to know about the start date and end dates. I'll also mention due date and end date is in here. End date would hide the module. It would revert it back to you can read the description at the top and you can view them, but you can't open them anymore. I don't see this get used very often. I can't imagine a situation where there's harm in letting the students pull up an old PowerPoint or rewatch an old video. Um, Due date is always a soft deadline, so you could apply a due date to this as like a reminder to the students, hey, have all this stuff done by this time. It wouldn't hide anything, it wouldn't lock anything out, it would just flash, hey, try to have this done Sunday at midnight. So these two I don't get seen so much. One of the last things I'll mention, another thing that generates questions, is here in week 1, I used this add existing activities to make a link to a quiz. So I built the quiz under the quizzes tab, and in week 1 I wanted them to take it, so I made a shortcut under here, send them to the quiz. If I hide this module, it does not also hide the quiz. If I put a start date and an end date on the module, that hides my handouts and the link, the shortcut to the quiz, but it does not hide the quiz itself. So I'll demo that. I can hide week 1. If I flip to be a student, just to prove it to you, week 1's gone. But if I go to the quiz is still there. So be aware of that. Some folks, I've seen this a handful of times in the past, they won't put start and end dates on their quizzes when they build them. They'll put the start and end date on the module and have a shortcut to the quiz, and they won't realize that students can still come into here and take it. So kind of be aware of that concept of the quiz itself and the shortcut to the quiz are two different things that can be hidden and have dates on them. So that is the bulk of what to know about hiding stuff. If you want to outright hide something, it's just this little toggle button up here. Programming in the start dates is nice, but like I showed you, it's not as hidden as you would think. And of course, you only have to program the start date once at the top, put it here, and then it applies to everything inside. So that is part 2 of hiding things and describing things.